there are moments in life that split everything in two, before and after. You carry both halves with you everywhere you go, but they never quite fit back together. No matter how many years pass, no matter how many times you tell yourself you have moved on. I was 53 years old when it happened. It was a Tuesday, an ordinary, unremarkable Tuesday in the middle of October. The leaves outside had just started to turn that deep, tired gold, the kind that makes the whole world look like it is getting ready to let go. I had come home from work, taken off my shoes by the door, and was standing in my kitchen heating up leftover soup. That is all, just soup, just Tuesday. And then the doorbell rang. Now I was not expecting anyone. My daughter, Naomi, lives 2 hours away. My neighbor, Ruth, always texts before she comes over. I was not waiting on a delivery. So I wiped my hands on the dish towel, walked through the hallway, and opened the front door the way you open a door when you think it might be someone selling magazines or asking about your lawn. But it was not someone selling magazines. Standing on my porch, in a wrinkled gray coat, with silver hair I did not recognize and lines carved deep into a face I had spent 20 years trying to forget, was Marcus. My husband. Or rather, the man who used to be my husband. The man who had walked out of this very same door when our daughter was only 3 years old. The man who left a note on the kitchen counter, took his car keys, and disappeared from our lives without so much as a phone call, a letter, or even a goodbye that made any kind of sense. 20 years. 7,300 days, give or take. And there he was, standing in front of me like time had folded in on itself and dropped him right back where he started. He looked at me, I looked at him, and for what felt like a full minute, neither one of us said a word. The evening air came in through the screen, cool and sharp. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Then he spoke. "Grace," he said, "just my name, that is all, just Grace." And I felt my knees go soft, not because I was happy, not because I was angry, but because hearing that voice again, after 20 years of silence, was like hearing a ghost speak your name in a room you thought was empty. I did not cry. I did not slam the door. I did not fall into his arms. I just stood there, holding that dish towel, feeling the cool air on my face, and thought to myself, what do you do when the person who broke your life in half shows up and stands in the exact place where the crack began? I will tell you what I did. I opened the door a little wider, and I said, "You better come in." And that, my friends, is where this story really begins. To understand what happened that night, and everything that came after, I need to take you back, way back, to the beginning, to who we were before the silence, before the leaving, before I learned how to carry a family on my own 2 shoulders and pretend they were not shaking. My name is Grace Alina Coleman. I grew up in a small town in North Carolina, the kind of town where everybody knew your grandmother's maiden name and what church you went to. My parents were simple, hardworking people. My father drove a delivery truck for a bread company for 31 years. My mother worked part-time at the public library and full-time raising 4 children who had more energy than sense. We were not rich, but we were together, and in our house that meant everything. I met Marcus James Walker when I was 26 years old. It was at a friend's cookout in the summer of 1995. He was standing by the grill, laughing at something someone said, holding a paper plate with nothing on it. I remember thinking, why is he holding an empty plate? And then I remember thinking, he has the kindest eyes I have ever seen. He was tall, soft-spoken, the kind of man who listened more than he talked, which, if you ask me, is a rare and beautiful thing. He worked at a warehouse at the time, loading shipments during the week and taking community college classes on Saturday mornings. He wanted to be an architect. He used to draw buildings on napkins and the backs of receipts. Little sketches of houses with big windows and wide porches. Dream houses, he called them. We started talking that night at the cookout, and we did not stop talking for the next 3 years. He courted me the old-fashioned way. He came to my parents' door. He shook my father's hand. He brought my mother flowers, not roses, but wildflowers from the field near the highway because he said they were more honest. My mother loved that. She told me later, "That boy has something gentle in him, Grace. You hold on to that." And I did, for as long as I could. We got married in 1998, a small ceremony at my parents' church. I wore my mother's dress, taken in at the waist. Marcus wore a borrowed suit that was a little too big in the shoulders, but he looked handsome just the same. When he said his vows, his voice cracked, and he had to stop and take a breath. The whole church smiled. I remember my father wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, trying to pretend he was not crying. We moved into a little rented house on Elm Street. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with yellow tile, and a backyard just big enough for a clothesline and a garden. It was not much, but we made it ours. Marcus hung shelves. I painted the bedroom a soft blue. We bought a used couch from a yard sale and sat on it every evening eating dinner off paper plates until we could afford real ones. Those early years were sweet, truly sweet, the kind of sweetness that you do not recognize until it is gone. In the year 2000, our daughter was born, Naomi Ruth Walker, 6 pounds, 11 ounces, a full head of dark curly hair and the tiniest fingers I had ever seen. When the nurse placed her in Marcus's arms for the first time, he just stood there, completely still, looking down at her with those soft, kind eyes and tears running down both his cheeks. "She is perfect," he whispered. "Grace, she is absolutely perfect." And she was. For the first 2 years of Naomi's life, Marcus was everything a father should be. He changed diapers without being asked. He got up for the midnight feedings even when he had work the next morning. He would sit on the living room floor for hours, stacking blocks with Naomi, reading to her from picture books, making silly faces just to hear her laugh. And when she laughed, his whole face would light up like the sun had come out just for him. He was good, he was present, he was trying. But looking back now with the kind of clarity that only comes from years of distance, I can see that something was shifting. Slowly, quietly, like a crack forming in the foundation of a house. You do not hear it at first, you do not even feel it, but it is there, growing. Marcus had not finished his degree. The classes got harder, the shifts at the warehouse got longer, and somewhere along the way, the dream of being an architect started to fade. He stopped drawing on napkins. He stopped talking about big windows and wide porches. When I asked him about it, he would just shrug and say, "Maybe someday." But someday never came. He started getting quiet, not angry, not cold, just quiet. He would come home from work, kiss Naomi on the forehead, eat dinner, and then sit in the backyard by himself, staring at nothing. I would watch him from the kitchen window and feel something tighten in my chest, something I could not name. I should have asked more questions. I should have sat down beside him in that backyard and said, "Marcus, what is happening inside you? Talk to me." But I was tired too. I was working part-time at a dental office, raising a toddler, trying to keep the house clean and the bills paid and the love alive. I told myself he just needed time. I told myself he would come back to us. Not physically, he was right there. But emotionally, he was drifting, like a boat that has come loose from the dock, still close. Still visible, but no longer tied to anything. And then one morning, in the spring of 2003, I woke up and he was gone. I remember the exact moment I knew. It was a Saturday. Naomi had just turned 3, and she was in her high chair eating cereal, the kind with the little marshmallow pieces she loved. I came downstairs expecting to find Marcus making coffee the way he always did, standing at the counter in his gray t-shirt, half asleep, waiting for the pot to finish. But the kitchen was empty. The coffee pot was cold. His jacket was not on the hook by the door. I thought maybe he had gone to get gas or milk or something. I checked the driveway. His car was gone. And then I saw the note. It was on the counter, next to the sugar jar, written on the back of an envelope. His handwriting messy, slanted, the way it always was. It said, "Grace, I am sorry, I cannot do this anymore. It is not you. It is not Naomi. It is me. I do not know how to be what you need. Please do not look for me. I am sorry." That was it. No explanation, no forwarding address. No, "I love you." Just, "I am sorry, I cannot do this anymore." I read it 3 times. Then I folded it and put it in my pocket. Then I turned around and looked at Naomi, who was smashing a marshmallow between her fingers and smiling at me like the whole world was made of sweetness. And I smiled back. Because what else could I do? The first few days, I kept expecting him to come back. Every time a car pulled into the street, I looked out the window. Every time the phone rang, my heart jumped. I thought surely he did not mean it. Surely he just needed air. Surely he would walk through that door and say, "I made a mistake, I am home." But he did not. A week passed, then 2, then a month. I called his mother. She said she had not heard from him either. I could hear the shame in her voice, the way she kept apologizing like it was her fault. I raised him better than this, Grace. I do not know what happened to that boy. I called his brother, David. He said Marcus had called him once from a payphone somewhere out of state, said he was okay, said he needed space, said he would be in touch, but he never was. I filed a missing person report, but the police told me that since he had left voluntarily and was not in danger, there was not much they could do. He was a grown man who had chosen to leave. That was his right. His right. I remember sitting in that police station, holding Naomi on my hip, and thinking, what about my rights? What about her rights? What about the right to know why your father walked out on you before you were old enough to remember his face? But there were no answers. Not that day, not that week, not for a very long time. So I did what women have done since the beginning of time. I kept going. I went back to work full-time. I found a daycare that would take Naomi for a rate I could barely afford. I asked my mother to help with pickups and drop-offs. I sold Marcus's tools and his old guitar at a yard sale and used the money to cover the electric bill. I learned how to fix a leaking faucet by watching a VHS tape I borrowed from the library. I learned how to say, "We are fine," so many times that I almost believed it. But we were not fine, not really. At night, after Naomi was asleep, I would sit on that old used couch and cry. Quietly, into a pillow. Not loud, wailing cries, just slow, steady tears that came from somewhere so deep inside me that I did not even know the place had a name. It was not just sadness. It was confusion. It was shame. It was the awful, gnawing question that played on repeat in my mind. What did I do wrong? Was I not enough? Was I too much? Did I nag too often? Did I not notice enough? Did I love too hard? Did I not love hard enough? Those questions ate at me, for months, for years. My mother was the one who finally said the words I needed to hear. She came over one evening, found me sitting at the kitchen table staring at nothing, and she sat down across from me and took my hands. "Grace," she said, "you did not make that man leave. He left because of something broken inside himself, and you cannot fix what you did not break." I looked at her and said, "Then why does it feel like it is my fault?" She squeezed my hands and said, "Because love makes us take responsibility for things that were never ours to carry. But you have to put that weight down, baby, before it crushes you." She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing something in your head and feeling it in your heart are two very different things. And it took me a long, long time to close that gap. Naomi grew up without a father, and she grew up well, I want you to know that. She was bright and curious and full of fire. She asked about Marcus, of course. Children always do. The first time she asked, she was about 5, she said, "Mama, where is my daddy?" I knelt down and looked her in the eyes and said, "Your daddy had to go away, baby. It was not because of you. He loved you very much." She thought about that for a moment, the way children do, and then she said, "Will he come back?" And I said, "I do not know, sweetheart, but I am here, and I am not going anywhere." She nodded, and then she went back to coloring. But she asked again when she was 8, and again when she was 12, and each time the question got harder because she was getting older and she wanted real answers, not soft ones. By the time she was 15, she stopped asking, and that was almost worse, because the silence meant she had stopped hopping. I will not pretend those years were easy. They were not. I worked double shifts. I missed school plays. I sat alone at parent-teacher conferences where every other child seemed to have 2 parents sitting behind them. I watched Naomi write "father," unknown, on a school form once, and I had to leave the room so she would not see my face. But we made it. We built a life. A small, sturdy, honest life. I bought the house on Maple Drive when Naomi was 10, a little 2-bedroom with a red front door and a porch just big enough for 2 chairs. I planted tomatoes in the backyard. I hung curtains in the kitchen. I made that house a home the only way I knew how, with my own 2 hands and whatever love I had left to give. And somewhere along the way, I stopped waiting for Marcus. I stopped checking the mail for a letter. I stopped looking at every tall man in a crowd and wondering if it was him. I let go. Not all at once. Letting go never works that way. But slowly, like peeling off a bandage, one careful pull at a time. By the time I turned 45, I had made peace with it, or at least I thought I had. And then came that Tuesday in October. That ordinary Tuesday. The soup on the stove, the doorbell, and Marcus standing on my porch like a man who had walked through 20 years of his own regret to get there. Let me tell you what he looked like, Because I think it matters." He was thinner than I remembered. The broad shoulders had narrowed. His hair, once black and thick, was silver now, cut short, close to his head. His face had aged the way faces do when life has not been kind. Deep lines around his eyes, a weariness in the way he stood. He was wearing a gray coat that had seen better days and shoes that were clean but worn at the edges. But his eyes, those soft, kind eyes that I had fallen in love with at a cookout 30 years ago, they were still there. Older, sadder, but still the same. He stepped inside. I led him to the kitchen because I did not know where else to go. I poured 2 cups of coffee out of pure habit and set one in front of him. He wrapped both hands around it like he was cold, even though the house was warm. For a long time, we just sat there. The silence between us was enormous, 20 years wide. Then he said, "I know I have no right to be here." I said, "No, you do not." He nodded. He did not argue. He just accepted that, the way you accept something you have been telling yourself for a long time. "I came because I need you to know something," he said. "Not because I expect anything, not forgiveness, not a second chance. I need you to hear me, and then I will go if that is what you want." I looked at him across that kitchen table, the same table where I had eaten 1,000 meals alone, where Naomi had done her homework, where I had sat with my mother and cried, and I said, "Then talk." And he did. He told me everything. He told me that when he left, he drove north with no plan, no destination, no idea what he was doing. He slept in his car for the first 2 weeks. He ended up in Virginia, then Pennsylvania, then Ohio. He worked odd jobs, dishwashing, construction, loading trucks. He moved from place to place, never staying longer than a few months. "I kept telling myself I would come back," he said. "Every day I told myself tomorrow, I will call tomorrow, I will go home tomorrow." But tomorrow kept turning into next week, and next week turned into next month. And then one day I woke up and 5 years had passed, and I did not know how to come back. I had been gone so long that going home felt like showing up to a funeral I had caused. I listened. I did not interrupt. I let him talk because I had waited 20 years for these words, and I was not going to rush them now. He told me he struggled, with drinking, with loneliness, with a darkness inside him that he did not understand and did not know how to fight. He told me he spent 2 years living in a shelter in Cleveland, trying to get clean. He told me he saw a counselor there, a woman named Dr. Paulson, who helped him understand that what he had been running from was not me or Naomi or the life we had built. It was himself. "She told me I had depression," he said. "Real, deep depression. The kind that does not just make you sad, it makes you believe you are poison. That everyone around you would be better off without you. That the kindest thing you can do for the people you love is disappear." He paused. He looked down at his coffee. "I believed that, Grace. With everything in me, I believed that leaving was the best thing I could do for you and Naomi, that I was saving you from me." I felt something crack inside me when he said that. Not break, crack. The way ice cracks when warm water touches it. Because for 20 years, I had believed he left because he did not love us enough. And here he was, telling me he left because he loved us too much to stay and ruin us. Now I want to be very clear about something. I am not telling you this to excuse what he did. Walking away from your child, from your family, is not an act of love, no matter what your mind tells you. It is an act of fear. And fear, even when it comes from pain, still causes damage. Real, lasting damage. But understanding why someone hurt you is not the same as saying it was okay. You can hold both truths at the same time. What he did was wrong, and he was suffering when he did it. I had learned that lesson the hard way. "Where have you been for the last 10 years?" I asked him. He told me he had been living in a small town in upstate New York. He got a job at a hardware store. He rented a room above a laundromat. He went to therapy every week. He took medication. He got sober. He built a small, quiet life, not the life he had dreamed of, not the life with big windows and wide porches, but a life that kept him standing. "And every single day," he said, "I thought about you, and I thought about Naomi. I kept a picture of her in my wallet, the one from her 3rd birthday, the one with the cake on her face. I remembered that picture. I had one just like it on my refrigerator. I wrote letters," he said. "Hundreds of them, I just never sent them." "Why not?" I asked. He looked at me then, straight at me, and his eyes were wet. "Because I was afraid," he said. Afraid you would not read them, afraid you would read them and hate me, afraid Naomi would read them and ask me questions I did not know how to answer. I was a coward, Grace, I know that. I have always known that. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a bundle of envelopes. He placed them on the table between us. These are for her, he said. For Naomi, every birthday, every Christmas, every Father's Day that I had no right to claim. They are all here. I brought them because, even if she never reads them, I needed her to know that she was never forgotten, not for a single day. I stared at those letters. I could not touch them. Not yet. Why now? I asked. Why today? After 20 years, why did you show up on my porch tonight? He took a slow breath. Because I am sick, Grace. The word sat between us, like a stone, dropped into still water. Sick how? I asked, but I already knew. You can see it sometimes in the way a person carries themselves. That thinness, that weariness, that look in the eyes that says the body is getting tired. Cancer, he said quietly. Pancreatic, stage 4. They found it 6 months ago. The doctors said I have maybe a year, maybe less. I closed my eyes. I do not know what I expected him to say, but it was not that. And in that moment I felt everything at once. Anger, grief, pity, love, resentment, compassion, all of it tangled up inside me like a knot I could not untie. I am not here to ask you to take care of me, he said quickly. I would never do that. I lost that right a long time ago. I am here because I did not want to die without telling you the truth, and I did not want to die without giving Naomi those letters. That is all. He stood up. He actually stood up, like he was ready to leave right then and there. Sit down, Marcus, I said. He sat. And then I cried. For the first time in years, real, honest tears. Not the quiet, controlled kind I had mastered during all those late nights alone on the couch. These were the other kind. The kind that come from the deepest, oldest part of you. The part that still remembers what it felt like to be loved by someone who is sitting right in front of you, broken and dying and trying to make things right. He reached across the table and put his hand near mine. Not touching, just near. And I looked at his hand, older now, thinner, with veins showing through the skin, and I thought about all the things those hands had once done. Built shelves, held our baby, drew dream houses on napkins, and then one morning picked up a set of car keys and left. I did not take his hand, not yet, but I did not pull away either. That night after Marcus left, I sat alone in my kitchen for a long time. The soup had gone cold hours ago. The coffee cups were still on the table. The bundle of letters sat where he had placed them, untouched. I did not sleep that night. I just sat there, thinking, remembering, trying to sort through the wreckage of everything he had told me and figure out what to do with it. The next morning, I did something I had been dreading. I called Naomi. My daughter was 23 by then. She had graduated from college, first in our family to do it. She was working at a nonprofit in Raleigh, helping families find affordable housing. She was smart, strong, compassionate. She had become everything I had hoped she would be, and she had done it without a father. But the absence had left its mark. I knew that. Naomi did not talk about Marcus, ever. If someone asked about her father, she would say, "He is not in the picture," and change the subject. She had built a wall around that wound, and she kept it high and thick and well guarded. So when I called her that morning and said, "Naomi, I need to tell you something," I could hear her tense up through the phone. "What is it, Mama?" "Your father came to see me last night." The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. "Naomi." "I am here," she said. Her voice was flat, controlled, the way it gets when she is feeling something big and does not want to let it out. "What did he want?" she asked. I told her everything. The depression, the years of wandering, the letters, the cancer. I told it to her as gently as I could, but there is no gentle way to say, "The man who abandoned you is dying, and he wants you to know he never stopped thinking about you." When I finished, she was quiet again. Then she said, "I do not want to see him." "I understand," I said. "I mean it, Mama. I do not want to see him, I do not want to read his letters, and I do not want to hear about how sorry he is. He had 20 years to be sorry. He had 20 years to pick up a phone. He does not get to show up now and expect," her voice cracked, "just barely. He does not get to do this." "I know," I said. "Then, why do you sound like you are going to ask me to forgive him?" I paused, because the truth was, I was not sure what I was asking. I was not sure I had forgiven him myself. I am not asking you to forgive him, I said. I am asking you to know that the choice is yours. Whatever you decide, I will support you. I just did not want to keep this from you. She said okay, and then she hung up. I did not hear from Naomi for 4 days. I did not push. I know my daughter. She processes things slowly and deeply, like water carving through rock. She does not react, she reflects. And I knew that whatever she was feeling, she needed time to sit with it before she could speak. During those 4 days, I read the letters. I know, maybe I should not have. They were addressed to Naomi, not to me. But I needed to know what was in them before I could decide whether to give them to her. I needed to protect my daughter even now, especially now. So one evening, I sat down on my bed, untied the rubber band, and opened the first letter. It was dated June 15th, 2004. Naomi's 4th birthday, the first one he missed. Dear Naomi, it began. Today you are 4 years old. I am sitting in a room I do not want to be in a city I do not know, and I am thinking about you. I wonder if your mama made you a cake. I wonder if you still like the kind with the sprinkles. I wonder if you asked where I am. I hope she told you I love you, because I do. More than you will ever know. More than I will ever be able to explain. I am sorry I am not there, baby girl. I am sorry in a way that I do not have words for. Happy birthday. Love, Daddy. I read every single one, all 20 of them. They tracked his journey like a map of grief. The early ones were short, raw, full of guilt. The later ones were longer, more reflective, more aware. He wrote about what he was learning in therapy. He wrote about the mistakes he had made. He wrote about the kind of father he wished he had been. In the one from 2015, Naomi's 15th birthday, he wrote something that stopped me cold. I know you probably hate me, and I do not blame you. You have every right, but I want you to know something. The best thing I ever did in my life was help bring you into this world. And the worst thing I ever did was walk away from it. I carry both of those truths every single day, and they are both heavy, but yours is the one I would carry forever if I could. I put the letter down and pressed my hands against my face and just breathed. On the 5th day, Naomi called. Mama, she said, I want to read the letters. I drove them to her that weekend. I did not stay. I handed her the bundle, hugged her at the door, and told her I loved her. And then I drove home and waited. She called me the next night, and this time she was crying. Mama, she said between breaths, he remembered every birthday. I know, baby. He wrote about the cake with the sprinkles. I know. Why did he not just come home? And there it was, the question that had haunted me for 20 years, now living in my daughter's mouth. And I gave her the only honest answer I had. Because sometimes, people are so lost inside themselves that they cannot find their way back, even when they want to, even when they know the way. She cried for a long time, and I stayed on the phone. I did not try to fix it. I did not offer advice. I just stayed, because that is what mothers do. 2 weeks later, Naomi asked to meet Marcus. I arranged it. We met at a park near my house, neutral ground, a bench by the duck pond. It was early November by then, and the trees were nearly bare. The air had that sharp, clean cold to it that makes everything feel more honest somehow. Marcus was already there when we arrived. He was sitting on the bench, wearing that same gray coat, watching the ducks. When he saw Naomi, he stood up. And his face, oh, his face. It was the same expression he had worn in the hospital the day she was born. Wonder, awe, and the deepest, most terrible love. Naomi stopped about 10 feet away. She looked at him. He looked at her. And the 20 years between them stretched out like a canyon. Then Naomi said, You do not get to hug me. He nodded. Okay. And you do not get to call me baby girl. Okay. And if I ask you a question, you answer it honestly. No excuses, no softening, just the truth. I promise, he said. She walked closer. She sat on the far end of the bench. He sat on the other end, and between them was the empty space where a lifetime of memories should have been. They talked for 2 hours. I stood at a distance, close enough to be there if she needed me, far enough to give them privacy. I could not hear most of what they said, but I saw their faces. I saw the way Naomi's jaw was tight at first, the way she held her arms crossed over her chest, and I saw the way it slowly softened. Not into forgiveness, not yet, but into something gentler. Understanding, maybe, or at least the beginning of it. At the end, Naomi stood up. Marcus stood too. They faced each other. "I am not ready to forgive you," she said. "I know," he said, "but I am glad you wrote the letters." His chin trembled. He pressed his lips together and nodded. "And she paused. "I am sorry you are sick." He closed his eyes. A tear slipped down his cheek. "Thank you," he whispered. Then Naomi turned and walked toward me. She took my arm and we walked to the car together. She did not look back, but I did. And I saw Marcus, still standing by the bench, watching his daughter walk away, with a look on his face that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. It was the look of a man who had finally done the thing he came to do, and it had cost him everything, and he would have done it again. Over the next few months, something unexpected happened. Naomi started visiting Marcus. Not often, once or twice a month. She would drive up to the small apartment he had rented near town. They would sit and talk. She would ask him questions about his childhood, about his family, about the years he was gone. He answered everyone the way he had promised, honestly, without excuses. She was not rebuilding a relationship with her father. She was building one for the first time, and it was fragile, careful, like planting a seed in soil you are not sure can hold it. I watched from a distance. I let them have their own space. I did not try to control it or guide it or shape it into something it was not, because this was Naomi's story now, not just mine. But one evening, she came to my house after visiting him, and she sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Marcus had sat that first night, and she said something that broke me wide open. "Mama," she said, "I think I understand now why you never spoke badly about him." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "All those years, whenever I asked about my father, you never called him a bad man. You never said he was selfish. You never said he did not love me. You just said he had to go away. And I used to think you were protecting him. But now I think you were protecting me." I reached across the table and took her hand. "I was protecting both of you," I said. "Because the truth is, Naomi, your father was not a bad man. He was a broken man, and there is a difference. A broken man can still love. He just does not know how to show it without falling apart." She squeezed my hand. And for the first time in her life, my daughter looked at me not just as her mother, but as a woman who had carried more than anyone should ever have to carry alone. "Thank you, Mama," she said, "for everything." Marcus passed away the following spring, April 14th, a warm day with a soft breeze and the first wildflowers of the season pushing up through the grass. Naomi was with him. She had been visiting more often in those last weeks as his health declined. She read to him books, articles, sometimes his own letters, the ones he had written to her. She brought him soup from my kitchen because he said it reminded him of the way I used to cook. And on his last day, she sat beside his bed and held his hand. He looked at her and said, "You turned out just like your mama." She smiled. "Is that a compliment?" "It is the highest one I know," he said. Those were his last words. I was not there when he died, and I think that was right. That moment belonged to Naomi and Marcus. It was theirs to have, their ending, their goodbye, their final chapter in a story that had been interrupted for 20 years. But later that evening, Naomi came to my house. She walked through the front door, set her purse down, and stood in the hallway, looking at me. And then she walked into my arms, and I held her the way I had held her when she was 3 years old and did not understand why her daddy was not at the breakfast table. "He is gone, Mama," she said. "I know, baby." I think I forgave him. At the end, I think I did. I think you did too. We held a small service, just a few people. My mother, who was 82 by then, came in a wheelchair. Ruth, my neighbor, stood beside me. Naomi spoke. She talked about the letters. She talked about the park bench. She talked about the man who was not there for most of her life, but who, in the end, found his way back. "He was not a perfect father," she said. "He was not even close, but he was mine, and he tried. Too late, maybe, but he tried." Afterward, we buried him in a small cemetery on the edge of town. I stood at the grave for a long time after everyone else had gone. The headstone was simple. Just his name, his dates, and one line that Naomi had chosen. He came back. 2 words, but they said everything. People ask me sometimes, did I forgive Marcus? And the answer is yes, but not all at once. Forgiveness, I have learned, is not a single moment. It is not a door you open and walk through and you are done. It is more like a path you walk slowly over many days, through rain and sun and fog. Some days you are further along the path than others. Some days you turn around and walk backward for a while, but you keep going. Because the alternative, standing still in your anger forever, is no kind of life at all. I forgave Marcus not because what he did was okay. It was not okay. Leaving your family without a word, without a reason, without a goodbye, that is not okay. It will never be okay. But I forgave him because carrying that weight, the resentment, the questions, the what-ifs, was heavier than the forgiveness itself. And I was tired of being heavy. My mother once told me, forgiveness is not a gift you give to the person who hurt you. It is a gift you give to yourself. And she was right. She was always right about the things that mattered most. I am 55 now. Naomi is 25. She is doing well, building her life, helping others, becoming the kind of woman who makes the world a little kinder just by being in it. She keeps a photo of Marcus on her bookshelf. The one from his last birthday, the one she took herself. In it, he is smiling, really smiling. The way he used to smile at that cookout 30 years ago when he was holding an empty plate and I thought he had the kindest eyes I had ever seen. She also keeps the letters, all 20 of them, in a box on the top shelf of her closet. She told me once that she does not read them often, but she likes knowing they are there, that they exist, that for 20 years, even when he was gone, he was still writing her name at the top of a page and telling her she mattered. And me, I still live in the house on Maple Drive. The red front door, the porch with 2 chairs, the backyard with the tomatoes. Some evenings I sit outside and watch the street go quiet and I think about everything. The good years and the hard years, the silence and the noise, the leaving and the coming back. And I think about that Tuesday in October, the doorbell, the gray coat, the soft, kind eyes. I think about the fact that Marcus walked through 20 years of his own darkness to stand on my porch and say one word, Grace. And I think about the fact that I opened the door. Because here is what I have learned, my friends. And this is the thing I want to leave you with tonight. People are not just one thing. They are not just the worst thing they have done. And they are not just the best thing either. They are everything, the love and the fear, the courage and the cowardice, the staying and the leaving, the silence and the letters they wrote but never sent. And forgiveness, real forgiveness, is not about pretending the hurt did not happen. It is about deciding that the hurt does not get to be the last word, that there is something bigger, something softer, something that outlasts the pain. I do not know if Marcus deserved forgiveness. Maybe that is not for me to decide, but I know that giving it, choosing it, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard, set something free inside me that had been locked away for 20 years. And I know that Naomi, sitting beside her father's bed at the end, holding his hand, reading him his own words, that was the bravest thing I have ever seen anyone do. Braver than anything I have ever done. She looked at the man who had broken her, and she chose to be whole anyway. That is not weakness. That is strength. That is love doing the only thing love knows how to do. It keeps going.